for me, it's an easy watch. It's 91 minutes,
Yeah.
and it's original. It's a science fiction thriller. It's got a great performance in it. Got two great performances, one by a
Oh, yeah.
lead, by a solo person going. So for me, Gravity should be talked about more. Um, quite possibly one of the best space. It's up there.
Yeah.
Maybe not top 5, but top 10 space movie of all time. Maybe.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
I wouldn't argue that.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
All right, here we are.
Yeah.
So we were taking a look at some of the films we could do for our next breakdown, and this one was trending on social media. So I presented it to Ricardo, and we said let's go for it. So
Yeah.
it's about 10 years old. So
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting to look back and see um, just where we were 10 years ago with film, and this
Yep.
was a standout movie from that year for sure. And
Yeah.
so this movie was directed by Alfonso Cuarón.
Cuarón.
It was released October the 4th of 2013. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for Gravity.
Gravity. Man, this was another time where you brought it up and I was like, I just can't wait to watch it again. I've seen it recently. I think I saw it over a year ago, and I remember watching it and still being like, wow. And again, for a film that came out in 2013, there's a lot of good things to talk about in 2023, whether it's technical, whether it's performances. There's a lot of good things to talk about. So I'm happy that it was trending on social media, because I feel like this is one of those movies that gets missed a lot in conversation. So I was happy for us to be able to watch it and talk about it. But the fact that this movie came out in 2013, and again, it's just one of those films that I could watch years later and watch in 2023 and just be blown away by a lot of aspects about this movie.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on it as we discuss the movie, that was a pretty strong year for movies.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you folks know we're fans of the DCEU. So
Yeah.
that year, one of our standout films was Man of Steel. But
Yes.
we're not going to let things go by as far as Gravity is considered. And
Mm-hmm.
let's get started here.
Yeah.
So the Space Shuttle Explorer is commanded by veteran astronaut Matt Kowalski, and it's in Earth's orbit to service the Hubble Space Telescope. And Dr. Ryan Stone, and by the way, Kowalski's played by George Clooney,
Mm-hmm.
and we have Dr. Ryan Stone played by Sandra Bullock, and she's aboard on her first space mission to perform a set of hardware upgrades on the Hubble. During a spacewalk, Mission Control in Houston warns the Explorer's crew about a rapidly expanding cloud of space debris accidentally caused by the Russians having shot down a presumed defunct spy satellite, and orders the crew to return to Earth immediately. Communication with Mission Control is lost shortly after, as more communication satellites are disabled by debris. So, before we get to the exciting part here, you brought something up to me off the air.
Yes.
It's very still. It's very quiet. It's very peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
You see Earth in the background. George Clooney is wisecracking with Sandra Bullock's character, and they're both talking back and forth. He's being George Clooney, she's being Sandra Bullock. It's fun.
Yes.
And I think he said can't beat the view. I think he even said that.
Can't beat the view.
But you discovered something as far as the shot is considered that you pointed to me off the air.
Yes. Now, I remember watching for the first time. This was one of those movies I got to see in the theater, and I was kind of just taken back, one, by how beautiful everything looked. Again, this came out in 2013, and when I watched it today, I'm just blown away by how great it looks. But I noticed that there weren't many cuts and it was just one very smooth consecutive shot. And being that they're in space and it's very smooth and there's not a lot of fast movement, you'll see Matt's character go from one position to another. You'll see Sandra's character go from one position to another, and they're just having an engaging conversation. And George Clooney as Matt is just very charming. But
Right.
I noticed that it's a very long continuous take up to the point where they deal with the debris, and it's 17 minutes. It's a 17-minute oneer, and it's great because I think oneers can be used for many different types of scenarios. Usually we'll see a oneer like a very fast action type of event where like there's a bunch of people fighting and it's like, oh man, did you see how cool that oneer was? Or that car chase scene, did you see how cool that oneer is? But I really appreciate it that this oneer was just taking place between two of our characters having a conversation in space to kind of let us feel what it feels like in space. As you mentioned, it's very peaceful, it's very quiet, it's very somber, and the only things that we hear are the two voices between our characters and them getting to work on the satellite. And again, as things start getting exciting, we're still in that oneer. So we get to go from this very peaceful environment to a very violent one, and we get to have that experience the same way the characters do in one shot. 17 minutes. It was delightful.
Yeah. So out of nowhere, the debris strikes the Explorer and the Hubble, tearing Stone from the shuttle and leaving her tumbling through space. She's doing 360s, just flipping and
Yes.
flipping and flipping. Kowalski, using a manned maneuvering unit, MMU, rescues Stone, and they return to the Explorer, discovering that the shuttle has suffered catastrophic damage and the rest of the crew are dead. Stone and Kowalski decide to use the MMU to reach the International Space Station, which is in orbit about 1,450 kilometers away. And Kowalski estimating that they have 90 minutes before the debris field completes an orbit and threatens them again. So let's break this
Yes.
scene down here.
Yes.
So she's spinning, and
Mhm.
it feels like it's getting worse and worse and worse. And he does eventually save her. And he does so, and then to calm her down, it's just like, hey, I know this. You never been this close to me. You never realize how good looking I am, right?
It's
So
so fun.
you're thinking about that right now, but listen, we need to focus. And
Mhm.
his humor is getting us through this situation, and she's still worried because she's like, my oxygen is at 6%, my oxygen is at 5%, and a lot happens there. And then we get back to the shuttle. We already know one person doesn't make it because they
Mhm.
try to retrieve his body. And then we get back to the shuttle and it's just bodies, because the
Yeah.
shuttle got hit with the debris. You're not going to survive you know, in space if,
Yeah.
your ship breaches. And it's just real disturbing once we get back to the ship. So, like I said, everything's real peaceful. The debris hits, and then all of a sudden, just all this action starts hitting, and it's actually really scary because
V
if we don't know if Stone is going to get saved because you don't
No.
hear him for a while.
No, it is very I think scary is it's horrifying to be honest, 'cause, like, we've had conversations outside of this, the ocean, space, those are 2 places that I find extremely terrifying. Space, there's no sound, it's just darkness and cold, and the idea of drifting through space is absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So when you see Stone and she's flipping and going 180, 360, just going all over the place, she is also having a difficult time of being able to kind of, I mean, there's no gravity. So you
Right.
can't really say like you're straight up or you're upside down. It's just very all over the place. So that has to be very, very, very scary and uncomfortable. So just watching that, I remember we go, like you mentioned, we go from this really peaceful, somber conversation to just a lot of adrenaline very fast. And it's so haunting that as we see the debris hit, you can't hear it. You're just visually seeing it. So behind them, you see debris destroying this and destroying that, and you don't really hear anything. All you can really hear are the characters, breathing and screaming, especially Stone. And one thing that I really appreciated about this scene too was showing the inexperience with Stone versus Matt, where Matt is like, okay, We're going to keep calm. We're going to be level. This is where we are. And you have a lot of moments where Stone is like, what do I do? What do I do? And she's scared. I can't see anything. Where am I going? Help me. Like, it's very, and understandably so. Her reaction is very chaotic and very scared. And he's scared too, but you can tell he's using his humor to deflect, the whole I'm very good looking and, we can't think about that right now. But even in his tone, the way he just speaks to her, he's like, hey, we're going to be okay. I need you to listen. This is what we're going to do. And she's, and you hear her breathing. And as you mentioned, she talks about the oxygen getting lower and lower, which can be terrifying. It's like, all right, that's cool. This is what we're going to do. But that whole sequence is terrifying. The idea of being in space and wandering off into middle of space, endless, eternal blackness until you run out of oxygen. It's death. It's scary in every right. So I appreciate it going from the moment of, just like I said, very calm, to show you how scary space can be, and then the difference between Matt and Stone and watching them interact in that moment.
And Cuaron, does this thing throughout moments of the film where the music swells. It's almost like a jump scare when something happens.
Yes.
Like when the body hit, it was like a boom. You hear like the sound swells, like a jump scare. And then also when they discovered the dead bodies, it was like a jump
Yes.
scare. And I was just like, all right, this is a science fiction thriller, but you're sneaking some horror in here.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember specifically when they find the body in the ship and you see, I believe it's a female astronaut. There's a giant swell in the music. Bam! And it hits you. And I remember thinking today, actually, because again, I had seen it maybe a year ago, but today, exactly what you said. I was like, oh, wait a minute. That was a jump scare. Like the way he did that. So like you said, space is already scary, but he added some horror elements as well.
Right, and then when they went to retrieve the body of the one man, half his face was missing because the debris shattered the helmet and tore his face, and she's just staring. Then she sees him with a picture of his family, hitting in the fields there, so. Alrighty. So on their way to the ISS, the two discuss Stone's home life and her daughter, who died young in an accident, unfortunately. As they approach the station, they see that the ISS crew has evacuated using one of its two spacecrafts. The remaining Soyuz spacecraft exhibiting damage with its parachute, having been deployed in space, rendering it unable to return to Earth, unfortunately. So Kowalski suggests using it to travel to the nearby space station. It's about 100 kilometers away, in order to board the Shenzhou spacecraft to return safely to Earth. So now we have a little bit of a mission.
Yes.
They are running out of air and fuel, and until the point that they run out completely. And the two try to grab onto the ISS. The tether snags on one of the space station's solar panels. Stone's leg gets tangled in the Soyuz, parachute cords, and she grabs a strap on Kowalski's suit. But it soon becomes clear that the cords will not support them both. It goes from like her leg to her knee to her ankle. It's like hanging by a thread at this point, and she's holding on to the, the tether so he doesn't go flying away. Despite Stone's protests, Kowalski detaches himself from the tether to save her from drifting away with him. Stone is pulled back towards the ISS while Kowalski floats away. This is a very intense and sad moment here.
Very.
Bullock sells the moment. She's saying, please don't go. Please don't go. Please don't do this. She might as well have been saying, please don't leave me, because she knows she will be alone in this situation. And he made the right call, because he knows that what's the sense of both of them floating away when at least one of them can be saved. So, he lets himself go. And then Clooney, just with that charming personality again as Matt, you're going to make it, Stone. And then one of the very last things he tells her is, you're going to have an incredible story to tell.
It's there's a lot of emotion within these few minutes, from the conversation of her talking about the daughter that she lost and where she is in life currently, and he's talking her through it, and you kind of get a perspective of who she is now. And again, you even learn more about Matt, about how he's trying to keep her calm in the situation and talk about things. to the point where she's talking about her losing someone, and then a few minutes later she has to lose him. And
Right.
it's a very, very sad moment, because, as you mentioned, he understands that if they don't release from the tether, they're both going to drift into space, and there is an opportunity for her to survive. And it's such a it's weird because it should be a haunting image, and it is scary, but there's something beautiful about it based on how Matt is acting as he's floating into space, which is terrifying. It's what he's communicating with her, and it's weird. It's like he's at total peace with it. It shows the experience that he's had, and he's willing to make that sacrifice for her. And again, it's that last thing he says, you're gonna have an incredible story to tell. Like, he has it fully in his mind that she is a survivor and she is going to make it. And if it's what she needed to hear to push her forward, he was going to make sure that he said it. And like you mentioned, she pleads. She just pleading, no, 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 I can get to you. I can do this. And he's like, no, it's okay. And that line of "you're gonna have an incredible story to tell," it hits you in the feels, man. It's a very, very, very strong line that she needed to hear in that moment.
And even though they detach, she can still hear him through the
Mm-hmm.
intercom. So he even then he talks her through
Yep.
getting back to the space station, and she's upset with him, and she's trying to tell him, you didn't have to do that. We could have made it. He's just like, you need to accept this. It's already
Yeah.
done. It's a done deal, and that's where he says that you're going to have an incredible story to tell. So it's good stuff. It's an emotional journey for her to let Kowalski go, but also to find her way back to the space station.
Mm-hmm.
She eventually makes it back. She gets through the airlock. She makes it in, and you know, she makes it in. She gets that first gasp of air, and we let out a sigh of relief with her
Yes.
as she's gasping for that. It's like, yes, she made it back. She then obviously she needs to get her bearings within the space station. She takes off the suit, and we get this incredible shot of Sandra Bullock just floating there, taking everything in almost a if you know about yoga, it's almost like a child's pose. It looks like she's
Yes.
in utero, like she's
Yes.
in utero floating there, and she's like just still, just taking everything in.
The first time I saw it, that image struck me immediately, as it did a lot of us, I'm sure. And just as you mentioned, I kept thinking of utero and the fetal position, childlike pose, and maybe it's the artsy fartsy side, but I remember watching him like this is her rebirth moment. This
Right.
is her moment where she, as a character, has to step up. From that moment outside, she was relying a lot on Matt. She was afraid, she was scared, and she's going to continue to be afraid and scared, absolutely. But he pushed her and says, "This is what you have to do now." And the moment she gets in there, she takes that breath, she kind of breathes, and she goes into that pose. And it looks like it looks like a baby in a womb. Like that's just what it looks like. And then she wakes up, she goes, "All right, it's time to get to work." And it's almost like a rebirth moment. And I remember thinking, oh, that was such a beautiful shot.
So Stone enters the space station via the airlock of the module. She cannot reestablish communication with Kowalski or Earth, and concludes that now she's the sole survivor. And she tells Mission Control that, not knowing if they can hear her or not. Inside the station, a fire breaks out,
Yup.
forcing her to rush to the Soyuz. And she maneuvers the Soyuz away from the ISS. The tangled parachute tethers snag, preventing the spacecraft from leaving. Stone performs a spacewalk to cut the cables, succeeding just as the debris field returns, destroying the station. This woman can't catch a break.
Nope.
So Stone angles the Soyuz towards the Tiangong, but soon discovers that the Soyuz engines has no fuel. After an attempt at radio communication on Earth, Stone resigns herself to her fate and shuts off the cabin's oxygen supply to take her own life.
Mhm.
Um, she just gives up. She's
Yeah.
like, there's no way. As she begins to lose consciousness, she experiences a hallucination of Kowalski entering the capsule and telling her to rig the Soyuz's soft landing rockets to propel the capsule towards the Tiangong. And Stone regains the will to go on, restoring the spacecraft's oxygen flow and rigging the landing rockets to propel the capsule towards the Tiangong. So they got me the first time I saw this.
Same.
And he's knocking on. It's like, oh no, he's back. Oh, it's
He
actually
made it.
yes, yes, yes. But then once he opens that airlock, there's no way that's.
Yep, because she's telling him he's banging on the glass, and I'm thinking, "Oh my god, Matt made it back! Like he made it back. Okay, maybe there was some extra power. He made it back. This is a guy who's got experience. It's all good." But then he attempts to open the door, and she's like, "Don't open the door." And you're like, "Oh my god, he can't breach it. She's gonna get sucked out. She doesn't have a helmet on. Like she's going to die instantly." And he opens the door and just comes right in, sits by her, and she's okay. And I was like, oh, this is a hallucination. And it's like her last will to keep going. It's that hallucination in the back of her head that's like, you can't give up now. And it's a great combo. And again, George Clooney, even though a hallucination, is playing Matt as this very charming individual. And that's how she remembers him. That's how she knows him. So he's having this nice conversation with her. He pulls out some alcohol that they left behind, and he takes a sip, and he's telling her what to do. And she's like, oh, don't you remember I failed this? And he's like, yeah, but you know how to do this. And he's just talking her through it. And it's a great moment. It's a great performance moment between these two, but it's a great moment within the film that, like, that was her last, like, hoorah, just like, hey, you can do this. Let's do this.
So unable to dock with Tiangong, Stone ejects herself from the Soyuz and uses a fire extinguisher as a makeshift thruster to travel to the rapidly deorbiting Tiangong. Stone manages to enter Tiangong's Shenzhou capsule just as the station enters the upper atmosphere, undocking the capsule just in time. So when she got into the capsule, I'm not saying this was done on purpose, but I was getting some Sigourney Weaver and Alien vibes when she
Oh, I
was
could
in
see
the
it.
when she was in that little cramped space by herself with
Mm-hmm.
the cat and the aliens who we didn't find out till later on, but just
Yeah.
that small cramped pod, so to speak. But I was just getting some vibes there from Alien. Obviously, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but you get some feelings.
Yeah.
The Shenzhou capsule re-enters the atmosphere successfully, so now we're in it. Now
Yes.
it's all right. This has the ability to come back. This is what it's supposed to do. I might not make it, but I got to try.
Mm-hmm.
And despite the damage it takes during its descent, it starts catching on fire. It lands in a lake. Radio communication from Houston informs Stone that she has been tracked on radar and the rescue crews are on their way. Stone opens the hatch, but is unable to exit due to the water rushing in. So now the
Mm-hmm.
capsule's sinking to the bottom of the lake. She takes a deep breath and holds it in until the capsule sinks, allowing her to swim through the hatch. She sheds the spacesuit because it's begun to weigh her down, and she crawls onto the beach before standing up triumphantly and walking away. Um, it's an emotional ending
Yeah.
as she gets out. She says, "Thank you." I know she was speaking to a foreigner
Mm-hmm.
while she was on the comms, and his dogs were going. He was like, "Oh, thank you for giving me some company during this time." Um, when she says thank you here, remember she said, "I don't know how to pray." Was she thanking a higher power? We don't know. We don't know
There's
who she was saying thank you to. It's so deep.
it
Um,
is.
but when she walks out of the capsule, I just remember the words Kowalski said, "You're going to have an incredible story to tell," and the hallucination told her that too.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so that was our ending there. But we can rewind a little bit and unpack just
Yeah, there's a
that.
lot of oh man.
Yeah, when that capsule started entering the atmosphere, to get there, like is she gonna make it? You
Yeah,
know?
like, because you never know, where these movies are gonna go. And we've had some endings where it's like, hey man, sometimes you can fight and fight and fight. Sometimes, it's just not gonna go your way. And you're like, because the whole movie, she's dealing with challenge among challenge after challenge after challenge. And like you said, like, man, this woman can't catch a break. And there's little moments of somberness where we get to, like, reflect on her as a character, like when she's talking to the individual, and she's like, and she even tells us, she goes, I think did she did I catch on to a radio station? Like, what is this? She's unsure of what it is. She hears the dogs. She starts barking with the dogs, and she's just like, she's just hanging on by a thread. And there's a moment where, again, she mentioned where she doesn't know how to pray. She's never learned. Um, and like you feel that she wants to just be able to say something to anyone that will hear her. Um, and she talks about that. She goes, no one will mourn for me, no one will pray for me, I don't know how to pray. Like, there's a lot of internal conflict with Stone throughout this movie, but in those moments where it's really somber, right before she's able to come back down into Earth's atmosphere, where you really get to open up. And like, there was one scene that choked me up real bad, man. It's when she's essentially talking to Matt on what she thinks is the other side.
Right.
And she's like, Matt, you're gonna meet a little girl. She's got brown hair, it's full of knots. She hates to comb it. Tell her I found her shoe, and this and that, and she's a great kid. And like, I remember just being like, oh man, it's so sad. It was pulling my heartstrings. But it's like, it was her accepting it. It was her accepting now that Matt was gone. It was that acceptance, like, yep, Matt's gone. It's just me now. And like, there's a lot of moments like that in the movie that happened, but right before that last shot into Earth's atmosphere is when she really lets it all out. And as you said, she's coming down, she's talking to herself. She's like, one of two things is gonna happen. We're either gonna burn up, or this is gonna happen. She goes, but one way or another, I'm gonna have an amazing story to tell. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have an amazing story to tell. And she's hyping herself up. So as you mentioned, you don't really know how it's gonna end. You don't know where it's gonna go. And luckily for us, we got a beautiful ending where she makes it and she swims out and she makes it onto the beach, and you see her just kind of clenching the sand with her fingers, and she stands up, embraces it, and she walks, and you're like, now there's a new challenge. Like, now she has to go find her rescuers and her way out. But it's just, Alfonso does a really, really good job with the somber moments that I appreciated too, because the action stuff is great. The action stuff is fantastic. It's adrenaline pumping. It's tense. It's scary. But a lot of the somber moments were some of my favorite moments in the movie, and we get a lot of those right before she comes back into Earth.
Yeah, to your point, it's a self-contained story, and
Mm-hmm.
it isn't long. It's 91 minutes long. It's
Perfect time for it
yeah,
too, man.
it's
Perfect.
great. Everything picks up when it's supposed to. It's a thriller, and it is
Mm-hmm.
thrilling, but it's a great journey for Sandra Bullock's character Stone. Like, we get to find out about the daughter that she lost, and to your point, she's had loss in her life, and now she has this loss.
Mm-hmm.
The whole crew, and then now she's fighting for her own life, so she doesn't lose her own life. And it's every single time she overcomes one obstacle, another one comes in the
It's
way.
another one.
So it's just hard not to root for Ryan Stone, in
Mm-hmm.
this movie. Um, and finally, I'll be honest with you, when she made it back to Earth, I didn't think she was going to make it. I did
See,
not think she was going to, because you're so used to like the ending hitting you,
yeah,
like giving you a gut punch where it's like, no, she's not making it. She's not
yeah.
making it. There's no way she's making this, but they found a way to, for her to make it. And we didn't need to see them recovering her. We didn't need to see
No,
what her
no.
story afterward. All we saw was her just saying thank you to whoever or whatever. And she
Mm-hmm.
walks away, and we get the end credits there. So,
Yeah.
such a satisfying ending. And
Yes.
that's our movie.
I
So
remember I remember, I'm glad you brought that point up, because I remember when I saw this movie the first time, this was one of those movies that I was like, I told my dad, I was like, you got to go see this movie, because my dad is really big into like space movies and things like that, but not super heavy on the fictional aspect. He likes movies like this that feel real and authentic to the space experience. So I remember I was like, Dad, you got to come see this. So I took him to the theater. My mom went as well, and I think my sister saw it. And I remember they view movies a little differently than I do, and that's fine. But I remember the movie ended, and they all were like, "We're not going to see her get rescued." And I remember going, "That's not the point. Like, you don't have to see that." And like, again, sometimes when you're having that conversation, they're just like, "No, it would have been really cool if we just saw someone save her. How do we know?" I'm like, "That's not. It's okay. That's not the point." The point was just trying to see her grow as a character and as a person, get from that point to where she is now. And she did it. She succeeded. And everything that she had to do on her own, she did it. She had the will to keep moving forward and to keep fighting, to stay alive, even though at moments where she just wanted to give up, but she kept going. So again, that victory of her on the beach, saying thank you and just heading forward for the next challenge. Maybe it's a challenge, the next part of her journey. Either way, she's got an amazing story to tell. Gonna beat that to the ground. But that was so well done, and it was just enough. That's all we needed to see.
So let's give some thoughts here as far as, since we just recently rewatched it. I got to give a shout out to Cuaron because this was an
Mhm.
original,
Yeah.
and they're hard to come by anymore. So it was really cool to see that. It was listed as a science fiction thriller, but he snuck some horror in there as well. We can't not mention the fact that this movie was uh, it was guided by a mostly solo performance. So
Yeah.
I always come back to, Tom Hanks and Castaway,
Mhm.
maybe Ryan Reynolds and Buried, and most
Dude.
recently,
Yep.
we just spoke about it. Blake Lively in The Shallows, just
Mhm.
catapulted by so a mostly solo performance. So credit to Sandra Bullock for that. Um, And, of course, I know I mentioned it before, but I got some Alien vibes while I was watching it because
I can
Sigourney
see
was
it.
kind of alone for, like, a chunk of that movie once everybody
Mhm.
died,
Oh,
so
yeah.
a little bit of Alien. Um, let's take a look at the, budget and the box office here. So, Gravity was made for between 80 and 130 million, and it
Mm.
was absolutely a box office success. It made 723.2 million.
Nice. That's a good
So,
haul.
an original science fiction
Original,
thriller
yes. Yes.
made 723 million, way above and beyond. If we even went to the max of $130 million budget, it definitely outdid more than twice its own budget. So, um, Gravity did pretty well come awards season,
Mhm.
and it came as a really big shock here. It was nominated for 10 Oscars, and it tied another movie for the most Oscar nominations that year, American Hustle, the David O.
Okay.
Russell movie. So let's take a look at the nominations and the wins for the Oscars for Gravity. We have out of the 10, the wins are as follows: Best Cinematography, Best
Yes.
Visual Effects, Best Sound Mixing, Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Alfonso Cuarón got the Best Director
Good.
Oscar there. It was pretty cool. He was up against David O. Russell for American
Mhm.
Hustle, Alexander Payne for Nebraska, Steve McQueen for 12 Years a Slave, and the great Martin Scorsese for The Wolf of Wall Street.
Okay.
The Oscars that Gravity did not win were as follows: it was Best Production Design,
Okay.
Best Actress, Sandra Bullock. She was nominated, but she didn't win. Um, that was her second nomination. Her first one was for The Blind Side, and she won that back in the 2010 Oscars.
Mhm.
And Gravity also lost Best Picture, but it was
Okay.
nominated for Best Picture,
Nominated
which
for
is
best picture. That's
just
not shabby.
nothing to sneeze at, right?
No.
Um, it was a stacked year at the Oscars. American Hustle, Captain Phillips, Dallas Buyers Club,
Oh, yeah.
Gravity, Her,
Yep.
Nebraska, Philomena, Wolf of Wall Street, and the winner was 12 Years a Slave.
Mhm.
So pretty stacked year, but
Very.
because of the technical achievements, the Academy rewarded Gravity um, for doing so. And
Good.
and you could not at least recognize Sandra Bullock for that performance there. I did want to recognize the other actresses there. Um, Kate Blanchett won it for Blue Jasmine,
Mhm.
and the other nominees were Amy Adams in American Hustle, Sandra Bullock in Gravity, Judi Dench in Philomena, and Meryl Streep in August, Osage
Oh,
County. So,
okay.
and then, uh, yeah. So, we mentioned Dallas Buyers Club. Both Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto won for their performances
Mhm.
in Dallas
I
Buyers
remember that.
Club. We mentioned 12 Years a Slave. Lupita Nyong'o won for her performance in
Yep.
12 Years a Slave. And then obviously, it got Best Picture there. But so stacked Oscars, lots
Yeah.
of great movies, lots of great performances, but the Academy rewarded Gravity
I'm
for
glad. I'm glad.
those Oscars, and it actually ended up winning the most Oscars of the night at 7.
Good,
So,
because
yeah,
and I'm grateful that it got nominated for a lot of technical stuff. Because again, the movie is great in itself, but there was a lot of technical things that I really was drawn to. Cinematography, there was so many beautiful things that were done in that film, that we, in particular, that one scene that we had, spoken about, but there's a lot of great cinematography. The sound mixing was so good, and again, you're in a movie you're in space. Sound is very important because technically there is no sound, so they found ways to really work it in. The score was haunting, man. There were some moments in the score that are extremely haunting and scary, and that are just creating the tense vibe of what's happening. But then in the somber moments, the score is beautiful, and you can't help but, even if, like, for me personally, I like to listen to movie scores. I could listen to those scores of the somber moments and probably feel the emotion that I'm supposed to feel in those scenes, and that belongs to a good score. But there was a lot of great technical achievements about this movie that I really, really appreciated. Again, this movie came out in 2013. It's 2023. And a lot of those technical aspects hold up extremely well to this day. And this is another one of those situations where I bring up a couple times here and there that if I showed someone this movie today who had never seen it, I didn't tell them what year it came out, they wouldn't be able to look at it, in my opinion, and say, "Oh, well, that movie was definitely made 10 years ago." Like, that vibe just doesn't exist. It's so well done and executed, and Cuarón did a very good job with the story that it had. Because if you look at it on paper, the plot isn't a very thick plot. It's basically a survival movie. It's a person who just has to survive getting the space to Earth, and that's it. But there's so many layers within the movie and character development and whatnot that makes the movie grow. So I'm glad that it got the acknowledgement that it got at the Oscars. I think it's well deserving. I am very happy that it got nominated for Best Picture. Like you said, it had a stacked year. So there was a lot of movies. I remember Dallas Buyers Club being a major talking point.
right.
12 Years a Slave. Like there was a lot of chatter with those movies, which is why, in my opinion, I thought, man, I feel like Gravity isn't being spoken enough about enough. But in reality, there was just a lot of heavy hitters that year. Scorsese, Wolf of Wall Street, which is one of my favorite movies. So there was a lot of good things going on. But I am extremely happy that Gravity got acknowledged for what it did, and for Sandra getting nominated for Best Actress, because, like you said, this movie relies on her performance. George
Correct.
Clooney is great. He's
Right.
great when he's in it, but he's in a very small chunk of the movie when he's needed. This movie relies on her performance. This is one of those movies that, same thing with The Shallows, depending on who you cast in that role, will have an impact on the movie. And Sandra Bullock is a great actress. That is no surprise or shock to anyone. So it's really not surprising that she carried the movie as well as she did. And I'm glad she got nominated too. And Alfonso Cuarón being, you said he won Best Director that year.
He did.
That's incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I am so happy. He was going against guys like Scorsese and everybody else, and our man came through with an original film, like you said, which is not done often as much nowadays, as much as we wanted to. But for it to be an original film, put in space, sci-fi elements, horror, some drama, thrilling, and great technical achievements, nomination to get nominated and win Best Director, I applaud you, my man. I applaud you.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be his last Best Director win.
Mm-mm.
Um,
Nope.
so Cuarón, I want to give a love to him and his filmography here.
Mhm.
So he did Great Expectations, Y Tu Mama También,
Yes.
Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
That's my favorite. That's my
Yeah,
favorite.
yeah. We have Children of Men. That's another science fiction
Yes.
movie.
It's a good one.
I'm just trying to do the ones I recognize here. Gravity,
Mhm.
and then a movie called Roma that came out in 2018. So
Mhm.
he ended up winning Best Director for Roma as
There
well.
look, there
So
it is. That's a good
and
director right there.
he's got a few. Y Tu Mama También got nominated for Best
I
Original
remember that one.
Screenplay.
Yep.
Children of Men, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Film Editing. You know, Gravity. Those nominations. Roma. I think Roma got 10 Oscar nominations too.
Ooh.
So um, and then Le Pupil. It's a live action short that was in 2023. That got this man is just Oscar nominations left and right.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
So give some love to Alfonso Cuarón there. Let's talk about the cast here. Obviously, it's a very small cast.
Very.
We have Sandra Bullock as Dr. Ryan Stone, George Clooney as Lieutenant Matt Kowalski, and a cameo from Ed Harris as Mission
Ed
Control
Harris.
in
I
Houston.
I remember the first time I was watching it in theater, and I was like, "That voice is so familiar." I was like, "Why do I know that voice?" And I'm like, "That's Ed Harris. That's 100%." And it was. And I was very happy. And I like when actors do that. You know what I mean? Because it makes me wonder, like, was this something that he saw Alfonso Cuarón was directing? And I was like, I don't care how small the part is, I'll do it. I always appreciate when someone who's a veteran actor who's been doing this for a very long time, has a lot of recognition, is very, very talented, take on even such a significant small role as this. You know, you never see him. It's just his voice. You know, he's just doing a ADR the entire time, but it's awesome. And even though he's only in it for a brief few minutes, you feel his presence as mission control, and he's great. I love Ed Harris.
So we're going to start winding things down here. And I mean, I think it just goes without saying that before we move on here, Sandra Bullock, this movie doesn't work without her performance, you know,
Nope.
clear standout. We needed her. And she was great. She was
Yeah.
awesome. So as I stated, we're going to start closing things out here. Um, just, it's so funny. It got all these accolades. It made a ton of money, you know, over 700 million, 10 Oscar nominations, 3 wins, and yet we don't hear people talking about this movie enough.
I don't hear it.
We don't
Not
hear it
enough.
as much anymore, you know?
Mm-mm.
So, um, I'm gonna close up by saying, "Hey, tell your friends about Gravity." You
Yes.
know, it had a lot of Oscar nominations, it got a few wins, it made a lot of money that year, but here's the thing that we just said, look at how stacked that year was with
Mhm.
all these gems. So, that's why I think Gravity falls to the wayside. I like a short movie.
Mhm.
So for me, it's an easy watch. It's 91 minutes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's original. It's a science fiction thriller. It's got a great performance in it. Got 2 great performances, one by a
Oh, yeah.
lead, you know, by a solo person going. So for me, Gravity should be talked about more. Um, quite possibly one of the best space, you know, it's up there.
Yeah.
Maybe not top 5, but top 10 space movie of all time. Maybe,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I wouldn't argue that. I think, like you said, I think it's because I always wondered, and I think that I think I'm even guilty of it, that if I'm having a conversation with someone, I think it kinda slips my mind a little bit. I start thinking of sci-fi movies like Interstellar and whatnot, and, you know, just other sci-fi greats like Blade Runner 2049, Blade Runner, et cetera, that I often forget, like, "Oh my god, why am I not talking about Gravity?" That's an amazing sci-fi picture. It's an amazing space film, a great drama, a great thriller. It's got everything you want in a great sci-fi film. You've got intensity, you've got great emotion, great writing, great character development. It's got everything there. So this is a movie that I'm always looking forward to watch. And every time I watch it, it's like I'm reminded. You know, there are movies that you can kind of have on in the background and just continue on with your day. This is one of those movies that I feel like if I just had on in the background, I would stop what I'm doing to watch because I'm just in awe from a technical aspect from just the movie itself. Everyone knows I'm a huge sci-fi person. Sci-fi is my favorite genre because it allows you to, you know, break the rules and make up your own, if you will. But this is a movie that follows the rules. This is a movie that stays within the reality of science that I really, really enjoy. And I think that there's a lot of great things about it, from performances to directing, from cinematography, sound editing, sound mixing, score, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think this movie gets enough praise. I'm glad we're going to talk about it because hopefully, if there's anyone listening who hasn't seen it, we'll take the time to watch it because as much as we can gush about it, it's not the same as experiencing it. I had the luxury of seeing this in theaters and kind of having
Same.
the air knocked out of me a couple times where like you would see those shots where he goes, you can't beat this view, and you would look at the world from that perspective, and I felt like I was in one of those like I didn't even see it in IMAX. I saw it in a traditional theater. I would have loved to see this in IMAX. I saw it in a traditional theater and I still had that feeling of like, oh wow, I feel weightless. Like I feel like I'm experiencing this with the characters. And that's a compliment to the production and how well it looked and how great it looked to this day. So, like you, I would highly recommend if you haven't seen Gravity, to take time out of your day to watch it. 91 minutes, right? Dude, in this movie, it like once it gets a hold of you, man, like it just doesn't let go. Like that grip is there. Even in the somber moments, that grip is there because you care so much about that character Stone. You care so much with Sandra's performance and the writing of the character that even in those few moments where you have to kind of just sit back and breathe it in, you're still with her and you're rooting her on. And for a 91-minute film, there's no wasted time. There's no wasted space. This is one of those movies that I think executes its time perfectly. If someone were to tell me, and I love long movies as well. If someone told me, Rick, would you watch a 2.5 hour cut of this movie? I'd be like, sure, but I think your 90-minute cut is perfect. Like your 91-minute cut, like there's no waste of time or space. And I think that says a lot about the movie and the execution of it all. So again, great performances, great technical application, great directing. There's a lot of great things about this movie. I think, like you, I think that if you want to talk about some of the best space movies, this should be in the conversation. I don't see why it wouldn't be. And I have to do my part as well as to keep that in mind. So when people ask me, like, hey, did you see Gravity? Watch Gravity. So I'm glad we got to watch it again. I'm pretty sure I own it. I'm pretty sure I own this on Blu-ray. I think this is one of those movies that I jumped on as soon as the physical copy was available to me. So yeah, definitely take the time to watch Gravity. There's a lot of great things we could talk about, but you'll get a better experience in watching for yourself. So Gravity, 2 thumbs up for me, and that's way up.
Alrighty. All right, folks, that was the Panel Bros official breakdown for Gravity. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we'd appreciate it. As always, those subscribes help our reach, and the reach helps us reach more of you out there, more listeners and more viewers. Also, if you could please let us know how you felt about Gravity in the comments below, we'd appreciate that as well. What did you think about the movie itself, and what did you think about Sandra Bullock's performance? Please let us know. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.